Boom, 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 boom. A side, B side. What side are you on?
And welcome back. What's up? It's the A Side B Side podcast. What's going on, Adam?
Not too much. How are you, Brooke?
Good, good. He's Adam. I'm Brooke. It is the A Side B Side podcast. So, how was your week?
It was still full of many going through old boxes and packing and purging and thinking about memories and taking things to Goodwill. And actually, I had a very weird thing happen to me. Well, I guess it wasn't that weird. It was just unexpected when I was dropping a carload of stuff off at Goodwill.
Mm-hmm.
And at first I was like, this isn't a big deal. Like, I'll just, I'm going to let it go. I don't need to think too much about it. But then the more I thought about it, I was like, wait a second, that was kind of weird. So I'm unloading. I had borrowed a truck for the week so I could take mass quantities, shout out Coneheads, to Goodwill of stuff that I didn't need anymore. And I'm unloading the back of my truck. And I take out this one. It was like a 2-level, like kind of a bookshelf, but just really a shelf. You could get them at Target or IKEA. It's like a square on the top, and then like it would be a square on the bottom, but there's no bottom level, and it's just kind of like stands there. You can use it as a bookshelf. You can use it as like just about any type of shelf, period. And it had been sitting in my basement for like a year. And so I was like, okay, I'm not going to need this at the new place. There's no reason for me to keep this. I'm going to take it to Goodwill. And I'm taking it out of the truck, and I'm putting it down. And like the guy, so things are different now at Goodwill, at least for me. They used to like, you could just like hand the guy stuff, but now I got to put it in a place, and then he goes and grabs it after I leave. I'm sure it's all related to COVID and trying to keep things less touchy and that sort of thing. So I take the thing and I put it down where I'm supposed to in the big blue bin. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, this guy from the car behind me who's waiting to donate their stuff comes running up. And I am not one. I don't like surprises because I always jump. And like I physically left the ground. Like this guy comes like running out of his car to ask me a question about the shelf, and I didn't see him coming. He asked me, and I just jump. And I probably made a very ridiculous, cartoonish sound as well. But he's like, "Hey, are you giving that away?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm at Goodwill, so yeah, I'm giving this away."
Right.
And he's like, so my wife just saw that from the car. It would be perfect for her makeup. Can we have that? And I'm like, yeah, whatever. I'm giving it away. Like, here you go. And I didn't even think about it at the moment, but I was like, but I just gave this to Goodwill. So didn't I steal from Goodwill and give it to this person?
Not if they hadn't accepted it yet.
Yeah, because I just put it in the blue bin, but it stuck with me later that day. I was like, oh my God, did I donate that, then steal it back and then donate it to a person?
No, you technically just donated to a person they hadn't accepted. I think you're good. You can clear your conscience.
Yeah, I mean, I was just like, I even said out loud, I was like, hey, it's not in my house anymore. Like, better, as long as it's out of the basement, I'm good. But later I felt bad about it because I was like, I kind of had promised that to Goodwill, and they didn't get their like $3 out of it. So I'll probably just go buy like something at Goodwill tomorrow.
I think they'll be fine. I really think Goodwill is not hurting for those $3.
They probably don't need the $3 they were going to charge for my particle board 2-shelf thing.
Not at all. I think you're safe. They're not going to go under because they did not get that $3.
I also don't want Goodwill coming after me. I mean, they got long arms. They're everywhere. I don't want to be on the bad list of Goodwill. What if I need to buy like stuff from Goodwill and there'd be like a sign. It's like, this guy took back what he donated.
Again, I think you're good. They hadn't come to get it. Here, if you drive through, they like immediately come out with like a rolling cart, so that you don't really even have a chance.
I was just impressed with the guy's like assertiveness, and the wife was in the car telling him, "Go get that, go now, go. That we need that," and he was right there. I was very impressed.
Well, you did a good thing because a family that needed it got it.
Yeah, and that was probably the highlight of my week. Like I said, it's out of my basement, so I'm happy. Because I don't have a basement starting next week, so I got to figure out some stuff.
My week was spent working, and then binging a couple shows. Something that I absolutely love. It's cheesy as all heck, but I am in love with it. Is Cobra Kai on Netflix.
So the comic book artist Rob Liefeld, who created Deadpool, has evidently been like, he's been posting on Instagram all week about Cobra Kai, and all these pictures of him with oh my goodness, the two main stars whose names
Ralph
I do not
Macchio
remember.
and William Zabka.
Yes, who was also the bad guy in Hot Tub Time Machine, which was so great. He's been posting pictures with them, so I don't know if it's like a coordinated blitz or something. Because did a new season come out?
No, a new season is coming out, but it moved from YouTube to Netflix.
Okay, so maybe that's what they're doing. They're like, hey, we're on Netflix now. Rob, please tell everybody about it.
Or maybe he just really likes it, because it's actually a pretty, it's like I said, it's really cheesy, but it's good. I mean, it's #1 show on Netflix right now.
I've heard really good things of it, so I just need COVID to probably happen again so I can get another like 3-month break and just
Can we
catch
not
up on
wish
all
that?
the shows.
Can we not?
Oh, yeah, I mean, but that's the only time I've been caught up on all my shows on Netflix and all the streaming services is when I couldn't leave my house. So I don't really want that to happen again, but if it does, I have a plan now.
Also, a couple other shows real quick. Lovecraft Country, which is H.P. Lovecraft show. I think we did mention it last week because it's a weekly show. You know,
Yes.
HBO is good about making you wait, whereas like Netflix, you can binge and you're done. But HBO is like, no, we're going to get you coming back every week. And so this was the 3rd episode. And this one caught me by surprise because it was a little less sci-fi, a little more supernatural, but it was still pretty good. I just watched it during the daytime because I had someone forewarn me. And then
Good. That's good to know.
Yeah. And then we talked about this last week, The Outsider, because you were talking about Ben Mendelsohn being in it, and he's really, really good. I finished up that. I don't know if there's going to be another season. I hope there's another season. That one also ended up, spoiler, kind of not spoiler, but because I'm not normally into the supernatural stuff, so that one kind of caught me by surprise. A few episodes in, it's like, I'm going to lure you in, and boom, hit you with the supernatural. But it was still
it's like
really good.
It's a crime detective show. Then it's like, oop, no, something else.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a whodunit, and you know, you've got Ben Mendelsohn as this very serious cop who's trying to figure out this case, and then boom, we're gonna throw in some Stephen King supernatural stuff because I didn't realize it first. So
yeah, it's always coming. It's hidden, but at some point it's gonna get weird.
Yeah, but it's really, really good. So those are the shows that because I don't have cable, so that's what I do. I just do the streaming services.
So you're one of those cord cutters, right? So am I. Not judging, but and thank you for reminding me that I'd subscribed to HBO Go last week during our podcast because I'd totally forgotten. So you're like one of those apps. You'll just remind me of stuff that I've subscribed to that I am not using. So now I am. Lovecraft is on the list. Probably going to be because once I get into the new place and I'm done moving, I will have spent so much money on moving and getting new stuff. I'm just going to quarantine myself when I'm not working. So that's how I'll catch up on all these shows.
Well, there you go.
Did you know Ben Mendelsohn was the main Skrull in Captain Marvel?
I just found that out the other day because we were talking about him at work, and I was looking him up on IMDb and discovered a bunch of his credits. And I was like, oh, wow. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, he's so good. And the only time he looks like himself the entire movie is when he's impersonating Samuel L. Jackson or Agent Fury's boss, who actually looks like Ben Mendelsohn. The other time he's like completely in makeup or CGI. I'm not sure which one.
I think it's mostly makeup. I think.
Yeah.
But
I don't know. It's gotten so good. I cannot tell. Like have you seen this Reface app that's popping up all over?
Yes. I think I used that once to like make myself older.
No, this is the one where like you take a picture of your face and then you pick a video and they'll slide your face onto the video.
Oh, yes.
It's like a deep fake type of thing and it makes it way too easy.
Yes.
So I can now actually put myself in all the movies I wish I'd have been cast in.
Yeah, because someone did that with Tom Selleck. They did that with Tom Selleck because, you know, he was supposed to be in Indiana Jones. So they did like deep fake videos with Tom Selleck with his face. And I mean, you can tell, but it's really good.
Yeah, it's still like the technology has come a long way.
Yeah.
And it's terrifying. But
real quick, I was listening to a podcast and they recommended this other podcast. And so I am going to pay it forward and recommend this podcast because it's really pretty good. It's called This Is Actually Happening. And it's just little short stories told by the person themselves. So every episode is just a different situation that someone has gone through. Like, what if you were an alcoholic at age 9? Or what if your mom died on Christmas Day? You know, what if you weren't afraid to die? What if you lost your sense of smell? And they're all, the first season, I believe they're all 20 minutes or less. They do start to get a little bit longer as you go further into the series, but actually really intriguing stuff right there.
Yeah. I would assume if your mom dies on Christmas, you just buy her Christmas shoes.
Wow. That was dark.
I mean, you know the Christmas song, Christmas Shoes.
I know that was dark. Of course, I do want to give you a warning because it's just everyday people talking. There's no censoring. So you never know what language they're going to use. So I'm just putting that out there.
They could just switch languages completely.
No, I mean like cursing.
Oh, right.
Gosh. Oh my gosh. All right, I am done. Oh, merch.
Wait. Yeah, we got go. Yes, go do that. Talk that. Words.
Merch is on our website. You can find it asidebsidepodcast.com. We've got masks. I am, as of this recording, I'm adding one that I think is going to be hilarious. So far, the feedback on it is great. Adam, you don't even know about this one yet because I just literally did it. And because, of course, we're still in the middle of a pandemic, so we do have masks for merch. And this one says only psychos don't wear masks. So I think that might be my new. I think that might be my new favorite.
I was actually stopping myself and encouraged you to do the promo thing about the merch because I was about to do some minutia, but I got my no minutia Adam t-shirt that it's very strange. It came with a note that basically said, wash this immediately. And it was like, thanks, Mom.
You still haven't sent me a picture of it, by the way.
Well, because I still haven't washed it. I mean, that was several days ago. And
but you could have still sent it like right out of the package.
Well, they said wash it first. I listened to notes. It was a very strongly worded note. Mm-hmm. They were very concerned about me dyeing my skin.
Well, I would still like a picture. I
will get a picture.
I'll send you a picture when I've ordered several of our masks and I am excited.
And we got stickers.
And we have stickers. We've got t-shirts, coffee mugs, sweatshirts, a tote bag, desk mats. I'm telling you, we went all out. Out. It has all this stuff. So head on over. There's going to be, I'm planning special Halloween merch for.
Oh, that's scary.
Ooh. But head on over.
How crazy is that we're like less than 2 months from Halloween?
I know. It's so weird because it feels like the world pretty much stopped in March. So I feel like it should still be March, but it's like pumpkin spice season.
Yeah. And Oktoberfest is back, which it's been back for like most brands in mid-August, but still, I mean, that's a full-on fall beer. We're in fall beer season, and I'm not ready for it. I mean, I'm gonna make myself ready, but I'm not. I was not expecting it.
I was gonna say I can't imagine you not ready for a beer, but
yeah, that doesn't happen very often.
All right, so we're gonna get ready, and we're gonna jump right on into things in 1 second.
Have you ever thought to yourself, man, I sure would like to make a podcast. I've got so much to say about blank. Well, if you haven't heard about Anchor, you really should. It is the easiest way to make a podcast, and it's absolutely free. All right, I'm going to tell you why it's so easy. Okay, so with Anchor, there's creation tools that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many others. And you can even make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Trust me, I'm so excited about this. You can be too. Download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor FM to get started.
All right, so it is your turn to start this week.
Yes, and that always makes me extraordinarily nervous leading off. I was always more of a number 9 hitter in Little League because I was bad at Little League. So I'm not used to going first at all. And my last name is W, so I've never been first in line for anything for most of my life. So it's a little intimidating to go first. But I have been, as we've talked about, clearing out old boxes, going through years and years of memories. And I found that in my nearly 40 years of life, I have had the luxury to experience music in a lot of different formats. I've bought records, like old vinyl albums. I've bought tape cassettes. I've had CDs. I now am a Spotify Premium member. I know, humble brag. And I use that nearly every day. But as I've been sorting through everything, and I've been trying to take this time of purging and organizing to like kind of look and catalog and figure out what I've got and what's worth keeping and what's worth taking to Goodwill to get hijacked by somebody behind me. And I found that only one album in my entire life have I purchased on vinyl, cassette, CD, and have downloaded as a playlist on Spotify.
Oh boy, that's a lot of the same album.
It's a lot of the same album, and it is one of my favorite albums, but it's an album that I completely stumbled upon. So when I was in high school, I think we may have talked about this. If not, I blogged about it or I told you some other time, but I got dumped at one point, and I basically spent an entire summer in my basement playing pool and computer games and listening to old vinyl records. And so I really got into vinyl. There was this romanticism about putting the needle on the record and letting it play. And
put the needle on the record, put the needle on the record, put the needle on the record.
Exactly.
Do you remember that was like in every single song at one time?
Yes. It was, and I felt really cool and avant-garde about it. And like, here I am, like everybody else is listening to CDs and I'm down in the basement listening to records and playing pool. And so I started going to a local record CD, like used store. It was called Cheapo Records. And it had, very, very cleverly named. It had records, it had CDs, it had tapes. And this was about the time when I was almost getting my license and my friends had their licenses. So it was like, if we didn't have something to do, we would just find something to do so we could get in the car and go somewhere. Mm-hmm. And if it wasn't a movie theater or it wasn't walking around the mall because we were mall rats, it was going to Cheapo and just looking through all the new stuff they got in. And to set the scene, Cheapo would have these giant wooden shelving units where they would just take, like, they bought used records, CDs, tapes, and they would say, like, this is all the stuff that came in on Tuesday. Mm-hmm. And they would just throw it in there completely unorganized. It would drive anybody who's type A completely batty, but it felt like a treasure hunt. And you would go up to the rack and you would just you'd lay all the CD cases back and you'd start flicking in. There'd be a little click, 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 click every time one fell forward into the other one, and you'd just fly through and you'd be looking for something that you've never seen before, or a CD that you always wanted, or something that was completely new. And they had the same thing for records. It didn't do the click, click because, you didn't want to flip records quite as hard because they're more fragile. But I was going through the records and I found this record that just made me stop. As I'm flipping through, I see this picture of a gentleman behind a bar, sort of graffiti like font, and it says The Return of Bruno. And I'm like, wait a second. I recognize that. No. This is well before Bruno Mars. This is a album from 1987 by Bruce Willis.
Oh my gosh, I forgot he sang. I completely forgot he did that.
So Bruce Willis, manly man of manly men, very funny dude who we learned like how funny he was. He was in Moonlight, he was very good. But then like that whole, like the whole 9 yards and the whole 10 yards, it was very like dry humor. He's always been a funny guy. And evidently, and when I bought the record, I was just like, oh my gosh, Bruce Willis made an album. I have to buy this. Because in the late 90s, I was into buying as many obscure actors who tried to have a band CDs and records as I could.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have Dog Star's album, and you're like, okay, who's Dog Star? After Speed, Keanu Reeves and two of his buddies had an alt rock band where he just played bass.
Oh no, I remember Dog Star.
Yeah. They're pretty good. Mm-hmm. But he was not like the lead singer. It wasn't a vanity project. It was basically just him hanging out with his buddies.
Right.
So I've got that. Last summer, I downloaded all of Jeremy Renner's album.
That's horrible. How could you?
I know.
It's so bad.
I know the sign is bad, but still, I kind of love it. This is a weird guilty pleasure for me. I love the idea of actors trying to be musicians, because if I had gotten famous doing one thing, I would then try to parlay that fame into doing anything else and everything else. Like, why not? Go for it. And so I fully expected the Return of Bruno to just be a disaster, because I had never known Bruce Willis could sing. Like, I'd seen Hudson Hawk, but even in Hudson Hawk, he's kind of singing. Danny Aiello does most of the singing. It's not really about the singing. They just use singing as the way that they cat burgle places. If you've never seen Hudson Hawk, go watch it right now. Don't hate me. It's great and awful all at the same time.
It's amazing. Don't you talk bad. Don't you talk that trash about Hudson Hawk.
No, it's one of my top 25 movies that are guilty pleasures, which could be an entire episode.
Which we have on a shirt, by the way.
We do. So if we've got, and a mask, I think, as well.
Yes.
Probably like a pot holder as well soon. Adam can't cook. That's an entire episode. So I bought this album thinking, okay, this is gonna be like silly. And then I put it on the turntable in my basement while playing pool and absolutely fell in love with the Return of Bruno. Imagine Bruce Springsteen crossed with Spinal Tap, crossed with a little bit of Neil Diamond, maybe. He's got soul. It's very Diamond? Weird. Yeah, I love Neil Diamond.
I mean, yeah, but Bruce Willis, Neil Diamond.
But it's more the way they tell the story and the humanity they bring to it.
Okay.
So
I'll give you that.
Within the Return of Bruno, there were 4 songs, and I didn't even figure. Like, I have had this album in 4 different formats for over 20 years, and I've just loved the album, but I've never really done any research into how this thing came to be. I figured, hey, Bruce Willis was a bit of a star in the 80s, and he decided to make a record because he wanted to. Turns out it was a made-for-TV special, which was a mockumentary about this former, like, huge rock star named Bruno, who this was his comeback special. So imagine like Elvis's comeback special, but Bruno is the character. And he had all these people involved that would talk about his career in music, where like he was a page with the Beatles, and he was the one who got Woodstock to be free. He convinced everybody they shouldn't charge for it. So it was very much this sort of like Spinal Tap-esque mockumentary, but he sings all the stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's actually really good. So the album itself actually charted as high as the 14th in the US, and then sorry, I'm pulling up. I'm trying to use my words slowly so I can actually pull up the details so I don't make stuff up. So in the US, it got. I know, it never stopped me before, right? By the way, I did mention, I think in a previous episode, that I was born too early and I've been late ever since. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was a lie, but no, my mother confirmed that's actually true. I was born 2 days early and I've been late ever since. She confirmed both parts.
Nice.
So that I didn't make up. I thought I was lying, but I wasn't. It was in the Billboard 200 all the way up at 14 in the US. It was the number 4 album in the UK at one point in 1987. And it even made the R&B hip-hop charts. Yeah, I said R&B hip-hop charts at number 27 in 1987.
You did say he was a bit soulful.
He's got soul. He does a cover of Under the Boardwalk There is a cover of Secret Agent Man, which is one of my favorite. Both of those are two of my favorite Motown hits. It was released by the Motown label.
Wow.
So, there had to be some soul in there. His highest charts was Under the Boardwalk, got to number 2 in the UK, and Respect Yourself, which was the number 1 hit from the album, got all the way up to the US Billboard Hot 100, number 5 in 1986.
I remember that one.
So my favorite song was this story song called Coming Right Up, about a bartender who is making drinks and saying coming right up, and then a bar patron invites him over afterwards, and she lives in the penthouse apartment, so he's like telling a story about going up the elevator as well. So it was like working on both sides, and I absolutely love that song, to the point where when I became a bartender my senior year of high school, God bless Minnesota's strange laws, because if you're 18 you can become a bartender. You can't drink anything, but you can be a bartender. I became a bartender my senior year of high school, and I made a point to use Coming Right Up as often as I possibly could when someone ordered a drink. And that has been a constant for the last 20 years. I still work in the service industry. I work as a bartender and a server. And without even thinking, when somebody orders something, I'm like, Coming Right Up. And every single time it is because of the Return of Bruno.
So now you got to sing it.
Oh, no, I've got links for you that we can play it. But the thing is, singing it, it's not so much singing. Like he's very spoken word. Like it's to the harmony, but then there's also like he'll sing but he'll just say Coming Right Up, and like it works. That's why I think it's more like R&B, hip hop at the time, because it wasn't clear. Like he's not Elton John, but he could craft a line, and there was so much of that actor in him that made the album so good. So it is an album that I have on vinyl, cassette, CD, and streaming, and I still listen to it regularly. And in fact, one of my fellow bartender friends at another brewery, we were joking one day, and I said, you got to listen to this album. And he's like, okay, this sounds horrible. I was like, no, just listen. I came in later, and he's like, man, that was actually really good. So of all the actors who tried to become rock stars, Bruce Willis, when he was pretending to be a fake rock star, might have come the closest.
He did it way better than the Garth Brooks, Chris Gaines. And Garth Brooks was an actual rock star.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Chris Gaines, like, it's real hard to go from country to emo.
What was the Thunder and Ray?
The Thunder Rolls.
And the Thunder Rolls, that's right. And the Thunder Rolls.
That is a great song. I mean, it's a horrible topic because it's about spousal abuse, I believe. But,
yes, I believe you're right. But
but it's a great song. It's like a very moving song.
That the only great song off of the entire album, and then to see Garth Brooks with like emo hair and makeup. I mean,
it was so weird. But I mean, he epitomized I've made it to the pinnacle. So let's just see how far I can go. Because he tried the Chris Gaines thing, but also at that same time period, he got invited to spring training with the San Diego Padres.
Really?
And he like got to play in spring training games.
He even has the little, what do you call that little thing of hair right under the chin?
A mistake. It's a soul patch, but it's a mistake.
The soul patch, yes. He even has the soul patch.
Well, he looked like Garth Brooks ate Chris Cornell.
Yeah. And I love that it's Chris Gaines' greatest hits. It's like, dude, it's your first album as Chris Gaines. How is it greatest hits?
That's exactly what Bruce Willis did. It says The Return of Bruno, and you're like, I don't even know he was gone. But that's not unusual. Like, and I might be wrong about this, and I often am wrong about things, but the first time that I ever heard a song by the Backstreet Boys, it was called Backstreet's Back.
Yes.
And I was like, you can't be back if you've never been here before.
Yeah.
But it was a really catchy song, so it worked. But from a linguistic standpoint, I'm like, Backstreet's back, all right. But wait, when were you here before?
Yeah, it's pretty much like, it's the equivalent of when people say the first annual. It can't be an annual if you haven't had one yet.
This is true. But most of my relationships don't make it past that, so I'm going to celebrate the first one.
With a festival, the first annual Festival.
Yeah, absolutely. Festival, maybe a parade. We're definitely gonna go out to eat. Okay, so speaking of to build off of this, go out there, and the Return of Bruno was on Spotify, and anyone who's listening right now can look that up. I found the original review of the album from People Magazine from 1987, which inexplicably is online. And I'm going to send that to Brooke so we can put it on our website as well, so you can read how much they didn't think of it in 1987. But we'd mentioned 2 weeks ago when I talked about Rick D's Hot American Top 40, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how weekly Top 40, yeah, because I'm so good with names. I mentioned that my daughter and I had been talking about an artist that recently went way up on the iTunes charts without having any background. And so today I was on another road trip with my daughter, and one of our biggest fans, who's my mom, reminded me that I hadn't paid off that topic at all.
Thank you, Mom.
So, yes, always for so much, but also like executive producer credit on this episode. So I asked about the song because the song had played. It was part of her Spotify queue, and she immediately told me, she's like, this artist did not have a record label, like only came to be because of TikTok. So her name is Mothica.
Okay.
Mothica. She's a young artist from Oklahoma. She's been trying to break into music for years, but she broke out because a sample of her song was passed around on TikTok as the background for a lot of videos. And then people started searching for it and downloading her. And she shot up to number 2 on the iTunes pop chart strictly because of TikTok. And this all happened, like she joined TikTok in April during COVID. She was like, I'm stuck at home. I'm going to put some of this stuff on there. Somebody else found it. And then people all started to do videos to her audio. And then that caused her to shoot up the charts and people to go out. She's got a full length album now. And I'm also going to send Brooke the link to her website so you can check that out as well. But I finally paid off that thing I barely mentioned 2 weeks ago that I've been asked about by no less than 5 people in person, because I still have not told them who the artist was. So,
and me last week.
And you last week. And I'll be honest, I completely forgot. Sometimes I just talk, and it's not like my brain is a stenographer. My brain's not keeping a record of the things I say, which, I mean, in and of itself could be a theme song for my life. But it's good when people remind me, like, hey, you said you were going to look this up. And I was like, oh, I did, didn't I? So, Mothica, the song is Vices. It's not entirely radio friendly. Mm-hmm. So just know that when you check it out, listeners. But it is a story of how much things have changed from, when Bruce Willis was charting. It was because he had a cable TV special that helped boost his album all the way up to 14 on the Billboard charts. Mothica used TikTok to get 12 spots higher.
Go TikTok. Of course, working in radio, I have seen several songs come and go specifically because of TikTok. Right now, Jason Derulo, who of course is an artist, but he has become quite known for his extensive TikTok videos. I mean, he puts a lot of energy and time into him. So he gets paid off of TikTok. Like, that's how he's making money right now. And he actually just released a song that's like a TikTok song that like went famous on TikTok, and then he just kind of threw some lyrics over it, and now he's got a song.
Man, it's the more things change, but music will find a way. It's not unlike Jeff Goldblum said, life finds a way.
It is true. It is true. All right, so Mothica is the artist that we were wondering about, and the Return of Bruno.
Yeah, go look it up, and you're gonna go in thinking I'm gonna hate this. And then as soon as he hits that harmonica, you're going to be like, yeah, Bruno. Yeah.
I mean, Bruce Willis still looking good. Bald Bruce Willis is still just as good looking as full head of hair Bruce Willis.
Yeah. I mean, Moonlighting was a great show.
It was. Sybil Shepherd, Bruce Willis. They had a great chemistry.
They did.
All right. So there you go. Is that the A-side?
That is all of the A-side I've got.
All right. B-side coming up. All right. And now it is the B-side. Is The Maid and The Mathematician. That sounds like it should be a Fran Drescher movie, or maybe like J-Lo.
Or even like an Agatha Christie.
Oh, there you go. I like
Like I could absolutely see that as like a murder mystery, the maid or the mathematician, and you know it's going to be the butler.
Quibi. On Quibi, they have the Mapleworth murders, and it's like this really cheesy murder mystery, and every kind of pun you can think of is put into that show. I mean, but it's so funny, and they have a ton of celebrity guest stars, like Tina Fey was in an episode. Oh goodness! And now I'm drawing a blank on his name from SNL, and then he was also a principal on Schooled, the Ladies Man.
Tim Meadows.
Tim Meadows, yes, Tim Meadows has been on.
I got that in 2 clues, everybody. That was 2 clues.
That is really good. That is really good. Also, there's several other people from like Saturday Night Live, and I mean, there's just tons of faces popping up on there. So, if you have Quibi and you like the murder mystery genre, you should check it out. But of course, like I said, it's punny and corny. But anyway, so this is The Maid and the Mathematician. It is the story of Willa Blanc and Walter Sartory.
Okay, even their names sound like a made-up TV show.
Especially Willa, right? Willa Blanc.
Willa Blanc. I'm pretty sure she was like a guest star in a CW show.
All right. So Walter Sartory was born May 17th in 1935 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. There's not a whole lot of information out there about Walter until college. Walter attended Carnegie Mellon, where he earned a PhD in chemical engineering. And then he went on to this incredible career. Like, first of all, Carnegie Mellon and a PhD in chemical engineering. So you know he's insanely smart.
He's going to the top of the Tinder list.
I don't think they had Tinder in 1930.
I'm saying if they do.
All right. So he's extremely, extremely smart. He's a brilliant mathematician. But it seems when someone is a genius in one area, they suffer in another. And that's the case with Walter. Walter suffered from paranoid schizophrenia.
Woof.
So for 30 years, Walter worked as a nuclear physicist and a mathematician at Tennessee's Oak Ridge National Laboratory. If that sounds real fancy, it's because it is. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, especially that Tennessee part.
This facility was built in secret for the atomic bomb project, and it became America's largest science and energy lab. So Walter worked on nuclear weapons, and he worked on some other projects, but his work on nuclear weapons remains classified to this day.
Well, yeah, you don't want any other people trying to make those. It's not like a recipe you put out on, cook.com.
But that also shows how brilliant and how his mind worked, like how amazing his mind worked. He published pioneering papers on reactor design and medical centrifuges and other projects. He won a top award at his lab, and he held 3 patents, 2 of which were for continuous blood flow centrifuges that separate the white and red blood cells from plasma.
Oh, wow.
I know, that's amazing. One of his kind of co-project creators, a guy named John Evely, he's also a British biochemist. He thinks that these devices are still in use at a lot of plasma centers around the world.
Yeah.
So
I probably owe having the ability to buy food during college to this guy.
I was going to say, if you've ever given blood or received blood, you can thank Walter.
Thank you, Walter.
Thank you, Walter.
That steak and eggs at Perkins was delicious.
So John said about Walter, he said, you only played chess with Walter 2, maybe 3 times because you were humiliated. He said, and I played chess for Oxford, so I was not an amateur. I mean, this dude was good. So a common sentiment amongst Walter's colleagues at ORNL, which is the Oak Ridge National Laboratory, was that
obviously
Walter was the kind of a person that you would go to with really tough questions, because all you'd have to do is like, hey, Walter, such and such. And he's like, got your answer. So
that is a valuable colleague.
it is very. So Walter was diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic really early in life. And as with any disorder, mental or physical, if it's a long time thing, sometimes you have to readjust medications, you have to do different therapies, and that is the case with Walter throughout life.
It's a constantly moving target.
Right. So throughout life,
body adjusts.
He was altering his medications, and I mean, it was really bad. Like, Walter believed that the CIA had trained ants to spy on him.
The dude just loved Ant-Man.
No, he probably hated Ant-Man. That's the problem.
Yeah, he was like, this is real.
He did not want to see that movie. Sorry, Paul Rudd. Well,
ironically, Paul Rudd was alive at the time, still looking the same.
Along with his paranoid schizophrenia, he also battled some social phobias, and they were so severe at times that he ended up turning down a very prestigious, high-paying job because he didn't want to have to endure the interview process. Which, I mean, nobody likes an interview. But look,
they're rough.
If I'm making several $100K a year, I'm going to suffer through it. Walter, on the other hand, was like, nah, I'm good.
Nah.
So, Sheriff Chief Detective Coy Cox. Yes, I know. Sounds like a movie character.
Wrong kind of movie.
He's actually the lead detective on this case. We're going to talk more about him later. He said that Walter only left his house for two things. He made sure he had everything he needed in his house. So if he left, it was to go out to eat. And he went out to seminars that he attended, these scientific community seminars. This makes Walter the quintessential perfect victim.
Whoa, we're going victim here?
Yeah, sadly.
I did not see that coming.
Plot twist, hashtag plot twist. So Walter retired from his work at the ORNL in 1992, and then he just completely closed himself off in a tiny apartment. And Walter, to make money, because he was retired, Walter used algorithms, and he invested in Wall Street. And Walter did a pretty good job for himself. He built himself quite the portfolio, like $14 million worth portfolio in the stock market. Yeah. Before the crash.
Similar, just way less zeros.
Take about, 6.
Maybe all of them.
9 of those zeros. I said 6, 9. Yeah, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. So before the stock market crash in 2009, Walter had a $14 million portfolio.
And I'm sorry, say that year again?
2009, the stock market crash, remember?
Oh, okay. So like 2009. So it's still like $14 million is still a lot of money, even 10 years ago.
Yeah. I don't know a time where 14 million wasn't a lot of money.
2056.
It might only be like $1 million, but that's still going to be a lot.
Yeah, 2056, that's going to get you like maybe a franchise of a Taco Bell.
I'm here for it. I can't eat at it, but I'm still here for it.
It'll make some money. In the future, all restaurants are Taco Bell.
So at the time of his death, Walter was worth at least $6 million. And that's not including the patents that he held that we talked about and his federal pension.
So he was doing all right.
Oh, yeah. Walter was not hurting at all. I mean, financially. So the very reclusive Walter started a new medication along with new therapy. And, things kind of, as they do, they improve for him. So much so that he started to travel. Walter moved to Hebron, Kentucky, which is, I think it's only about 2 hours, maybe an hour and a half from where I am.
So east or west?
Towards Ohio. So what is that? East.
East, yeah. East.
So he moved there because he wanted to be close to the Cincinnati Northern Kentucky International Airport so he could attend these seminars. In Kentucky, where he lived, he didn't have any friends or immediate family. Mm-hmm. So Walter, starts traveling and he's getting a little better. And he even went to visit a lady friend.
Oh, Walter.
And we're going to get into that in a second, but we're going to set up what happens to Walter first. So in February of 2009, 73-year-old Walter Sartory vanishes, which is highly unusual for a man that doesn't leave his house.
Yeah. It's hard to vanish when you don't go anywhere.
Right. So
we've all experienced that for the last 5 months.
For the last 5 months, if you just vanish, we know something's going on, okay? Because we all been stuck at home. Some longtime friends of Walter called the police after they were unable to get in contact with him, and they asked for help. And this is where it goes bad. Commonwealth's attorney Linda Talley-Smith said, "The fact to think that a man who was already paranoid and who lived his life in fear of others could fall prey to something so horrific is heartbreaking." So in January of 2009, Walter spent 3 days visiting Therese Terry Davis. Terry is 60 years old, and Terry lives in Binghamton, New York, which I know all about, being from upstate Western New York. Walter.
So wait a second. She's at least 20 years younger than he?
No, she's like, no, because he was 73 at the time, so she was 60, so 13.
13. Okay, that's fine. I reserve my judgment. Sorry.
Hey, there's a new dating app for people that like 20 years younger or older, so don't knock it, okay?
I don't need to know about that.
Are you trying to get someone 20 years older?
Why not?
Hey, do you? It's called 20 dating, just so you know.
All right, I'm gonna, at some point, you just need to expand the search radius.
So Walter and Terry met on a dating site. But this was a very specific dating site. It was for people with personality disorders. And this was actually their first date. Terry says of Walter, he was so shy, so quiet. She said, we held hands, and I'm pretty sure he never held anybody's hand before.
Oh, that's sweet and also heartbreaking.
It's so heartbreakingly sweet. Like, oh my gosh, at 73, he's finally holding someone's hand. Oh, my heart. So Terry also said that Walter told him that government agents sometimes tampered with his car. She said, when we went out to eat, he thought that the waitress was laughing at him. And she said, I couldn't get him to smile. She said that Walter also complained of a pushy housekeeper back home named Willa Blanc.
Or so she says.
Dun, dun, dun. So Willa's 47 years old, and she's real flashy. She's known for her big blonde wigs and her rhinestone encrusted fake fingernails that she wore even while cleaning homes. And she drove a candy apple red, some people say cherry, whatever, 2007 Corvette ZR1.
Wow. And she's a housekeeper.
Yeah. Willa liked flash.
What is she charging to keep that house?
Well, think of these houses that she cleaned. Aside from Walter's house was very modest, but the other houses in his neighborhood, these were people with money.
Mm-hmm. As Ludacris once asked, who's your housekeeper and what you keep in your house?
Mm-hmm. So Willa worked in Walter's neighborhood, and she offered to clean his house in mid-2008. He declined, but she was really persistent. Willa told one of her clients who lived 3 doors down from Walter, his name is Dan Stademiller, that she had spoken to Walter about her sister who wanted to buy a Prius, and that's what Walter drove. And so she asked him for a ride. And she says she was with Walter for 2 hours, and she commented on how he had computers everywhere.
Is there any two more diametrically opposed cars than a candy apple red Corvette and a Prius?
No, I can't think of, no. Mm-mm. So Walter complained not only to Terry, but to his friend Ann Carty about Willa. Ann lived in Sterling, Virginia, and Walter had also met online. Now, their relationship was purely platonic. They met in an online forum for mental health years before, and they would spend hours together on the phone nearly every day. Now,
I got to give it to Walter, though. Like, this man sought out resources dealing with his mental health more than most people do. That is
you have to admire that. He
was looking for answers.
Yeah, and he knew he needed connection, and he made that. Even if he couldn't do it in person, he still was able to make connection.
Yeah, he put the effort in. That is an admirable trait.
And it shows how important human connection is.
Mm-hmm.
So Anne, like I said, was married, and she and her husband were 2 of the only close friends that Walter had. He'd actually stay with them on holidays and other occasions. And Anne remembers one of the few things that Walter ever mentioned about his childhood, his boyhood, was being in the Boy Scouts, and that he liked playing with rockets. fitting for
Makes
his
sense.
fitting for what
Engineer.
he became. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. He told Anne that Willa would knock on his door and he would open the door and she would barge in. And before you know it, she's there for like 2 hours. And he didn't know how to get her to leave. I mean, this guy's, I can't imagine the amount of anxiety and stress he was feeling when this woman is in his face, in his house. He can't get her to leave.
Yeah. Not that I've ever had that happen, but it sounds terrifying.
So Walter returns from his trip seeing Terry in January, late January, and he found that someone had cleared his driveway of snow when he returned.
Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Like, hey, who cleared my driveway? Well, he didn't know at the time, but a couple days later, guess who shows up at the door? Willa. Willa dropped by to let Walter know that it was she and her 27-year-old son, Lewis Wilkinson, that had done the neighborly deed for Walter. So Walter let Willa in to thank her and to offer her money. Well,
as anyone would do, because we feel guilty now that you did this. And
right.
So...
And it's like, look, basically Walter just wanted to give her the money and like get out. And that actually was later confirmed. He just wanted to give her the money and get her to leave, but she didn't take the money and she wouldn't leave. Again, it was one of those times where she just kept pushing and pushing and pushing.
Mm-hmm.
On February 5th, Walter, who took medication, of course, for his paranoid schizophrenia and his severe social anxieties, was so bothered by his encounter with Willa that he sent an email to his friend Anne that said, I do not trust her. I might be merely paranoid, but I suspect that she might be running some sort of confidence racket. First of all, I love that term, confidence racket, because most people would be like, she's running a con. And he's like, she's running a confidence racket. He said,
I don't feel like this guy uses abbreviations in any way.
At all. He's way too smart for that.
He was like, I'm going to go to the automated teller machine.
Right. He said, or she may be casing my house to see if it's worth robbing, or both of the above. But
probably both.
But she has not actually done anything. This evening, I even had a blacksmith change all the locks on the outside of this house on the possibility that she picked up the key from the mess on my computer table and made a wax image of it to copy.
Like, this dude's paranoia is super functional. Like, that is very like he did all the right things. I
know, but you or I would not have even, well, you might have. I was going to say,
I might do that.
I probably would not have crossed my mind, So
yeah, it's because you're a trusting individual who doesn't check for exits every time they walk into a room.
No. Don't get it twisted. We're on a true crime podcast. I'm not that trusting. Okay.
No, I know.
All right. So about a week later, Walter traveled to Chicago to attend a 5-day AAAS conference, which is the American Association for the Advancement of Science.
Yeah, so, I'm totally a member.
I know, you just renewed your membership, right?
Absolutely. Dues have gone up.
COVID.
Science is hard.
According to evidence from the Boone County Sheriff's Department, within 2 days of his return, Walter was led down a flight of stairs into Willa's basement. But we're going to come back to that.
Wait, Willa's basement?
We're going to come back to that.
Okay.
Leave that right there. On February 26th, Anne and her husband, Robert, called the Boone County Sheriff's Department right here in Kentucky to say that their friend, Walter, had not answered phone calls or responded to emails in 10 days. The Cortese also sent police several of Walter's recent emails, including that one that he talked about changing his locks.
Mm-hmm.
So deputies checked Walter's beige bungalow. We will have a picture of that posted to our website. They checked it several times, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Even the shades were drawn. Remember back to that first episode and the shades were drawn.
I was like, like it feels like, nope, nothing's out of the ordinary. Well, like maybe that's out of the ordinary.
Right. So nothing seemed amiss to them. They left notes under the door, which my thing is, if you left several notes and you were never contacted back by a paranoid schizophrenia, something is wrong. Yes, I knocked on the door. Now my dogs are looking at me like, what's wrong? But come on.
Dogs are like, we're ready. What do we got to do?
So on March 4th, deputies noticed that the garage door was unlocked and slightly open, when they went to check the house. Now, remember, the 26th of February is when the Carties contacted the police the first time. March 4th is when they noticed the garage door is open. They go through the garage door and enter the house, and they discover that, remember what Willa said. She said she talked to him, and he had all of these computers everywhere. And so when the police went in there, they discovered that Walter's living room had been converted into a monitoring station for extraterrestrial life.
That's fair. I mean, you walk into my living room, I got 3 TVs set up and 2 computers. People would probably make the same assumption.
But I mean, hey, didn't we just find out like there are aliens apparently? So I guess he's not so,
there's always been aliens.
Off after all. There were 6 computers running and a program that analyzed radio signals from outer space. Deputies.
So he was basically running SETI by himself.
Yeah. He probably had more info than NASA because this dude's just that brilliant. So deputies found Walter's schedules. He set precise times to do everything, like brush his teeth, get dressed, eat. And then as each task was completed, he would check mark it off. In the kitchen, they found Walter's prescription pills, and Walter had to take those daily to prevent any psychotic episodes. So they knew, all right, he hasn't checkmarked any of his lists. His medicine is still here. He didn't voluntarily leave.
These are bad signs.
Very bad. So deputies talked to all of his neighbors, and one of the neighbors mentioned seeing a cleaning service van from Molly Maids in Walter's driveway. The company has released an official statement, and they have disclosed that Willa did work for them periodically. And Willa told them that she and Walter would be traveling indefinitely, which I don't understand why nobody thought was weird, but okay, fine.
They would be traveling indefinitely?
Indefinitely. Like, that statement doesn't just come off as odd, like indefinite. Like, what? You mean like a week or two?
There's like nothing I've done in my life indefinitely.
I mean, even if you have millions, what does indefinitely mean? Come on.
Yeah, that should have been like an alarm bell.
Yeah. So on March 9th, Sheriff's Chief Detective Coy Cox, who we talked about a little bit earlier, went over to Willa's 2-story brick home in nearby Union, Kentucky. When he arrived, she was outside getting ready to take her husband to the hospital for foot surgery. And she told Detective Cox, she's like, oh yeah, Walter and I, we're really good friends. She also assured Detective Cox that Walter was fine. She's like, look, I just saw him 2 days earlier. He was in the grocery store. He's fine, I promise. She said, but if I hear from him, I'll let you know.
Mm-hmm.
The next day on March 10th, Detective Cox goes back to Walter's house, and he finds a letter in Walter's mailbox from Fidelity Investments. So he reads the letter, and something just doesn't sit right with him. So he faxes a subpoena over to Fidelity, and they inform him that on March 3rd, Willa, who held power of attorney over Walter's accounts, had added her name to Walter's brokerage account. So the very next day, Walter goes back to visit Willa on March 11th, and he demands an explanation. Like, tell me what is going on. So this time she says, oh yeah, I just passed. Remember I told you Walter's fine. I passed him in his car.
So just to recap, I think there was a slip of the tongue there. So the deputy goes back.
The detective, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Because I think you said Walter, and it threw me off for a second. So I just wanted to be clear.
Oh, sorry. So the detective goes back to Willa's house.
Yes.
And he demands to know what's going on with Walter. And she says, I told you, I passed him the other day in a silver Prius. He's fine. And the detective is like, wait, that's not what you told me before. You said you saw him in the grocery store. And she's like, oh, did I? Well, he's fine. Whatever. Yeah, he's cool.
Mm-hmm.
And the detective says, she's like not even batting an eye as she's lying in my face. She's just as cool as a cucumber. So she assures him, she's like, I bet you he's home now. Just go check on him. If I hear from him, I'll let you know. Detective Cox leaves. And as soon as he leaves, Willa packs a bag and her son flee.
Mm-hmm.
Police, of course, are already, she's the prime suspect. So they're watching. They have surveillance teams. They shadowed them and they followed them as they changed hotels and cars. They did it 3 times in 2 days. They shuffled cell phones to avoid being traced. I mean, they were on this.
They were like doing every spy movie trick they heard of.
Yes, they have watched Mr. and Mrs. Smith several times. Okay.
Yeah, they were like, we're going to get out of here.
So the surveillance team loses Willa and Lewis in Cincinnati traffic. But fortunately...
So it worked.
It did work. But fortunately, they weren't as smart as they thought because they were dropping clues everywhere. And so they were able to pick up the clues and find them immediately. Detective Cox interviewed Willa's husband, Paul, and Paul is an electronics engineer. And he told the detective that when they met, she was his maid. And they got married, and she has basically drained him dry. She has run up $500,000 in debt. Before they met, Paul was living pretty nice. He lived in a really pretty posh neighborhood. He had a nice house, like a pretty pricey condo in an upscale subdivision. He had about $250,000 in liquid assets. So he wasn't hurting for cash, okay?
Doing okay.
He was doing pretty just fine, yeah. Paul also, and then now their house is being foreclosed on. And like I said, she's got $500,000 in debts that she's run up.
Jeez.
Yeah, I mean, those cherry red Corvette ZR1s, they ain't cheap.
No, but you got to buy like 10 of them to do what she did.
She liked to stay fancy.
Evidently.
So Paul also told Detective Cox that Willa had totaled his Chevy Trailblazer on February 22nd. He said that she had been on her way to rural Indiana to visit whom she liked to gamble. She would go to like the casinos and they would gamble together. Detective Cox takes this info and he drives to Indiana and he talks to the police there. They told him that when she got into this accident, she was hauling a large plastic trash barrel, a large big barrel, when she crashed the SUV. Willard told police at the scene that the 50-gallon barrel contained firewood and baby clothes that she was taking to her sister in Indianapolis. And they were like, okay. The lid was... Who
doesn't carry both firewood and baby clothes in a big barrel?
In a big barrel, yeah, just all in it together. Who cares if shards of wood get into the baby's clothes? Whatever.
Makes them stronger, Brooke. It makes them stronger.
So the lid was fastened on with a bungee cord, and like nobody checked because she was so like when she was talking to Detective Cox, she was just cool and calm, and they let her go.
Playing that confidence game.
The tow truck driver that actually came to the scene of her accident, his name is Bob Buckley. He says that he took her SUV, barrel and all the way back to Florence, Kentucky, to a local dealer. Bob said her demeanor was just like, thank you. It's so sweet. Do you mind just taking that to that dealer for me? Oh, thank you so much. You're so sweet. Yeah. So Paul, her husband, and Lewis, her son, they pick up Willa and they drive her back to Kentucky. Once she's back in Kentucky, Willa leaves Paul, and her and Lewis rent a Dodge van, load up that barrel into the van, and drive back to Indiana.
Gotta get that firewood and baby clothes.
That sister, she's needing that firewood. It's cold outside.
No trees in Indiana. We've all been there. Very flat.
Apparently, Willis stopped shortly before the accident to gamble at the Argosy, which is a riverboat casino on the Ohio River. On her second trip with the barrel, she stopped at another gambling hall. That's probably where that $500,000 debt is coming from.
Yeah, I feel like we have identified her spending habit.
Detective Cox said they played bingo until it got dark. After that, they drove to her friend's farmhouse, which is about 40 miles southwest of Indianapolis. The farmhouse belongs to a guy named Dwayne Lively. So police, of course, talked to Dwayne, and he told the police that Willa and her son drove up, but that they didn't stay, and they left immediately. Well, as detectives, I mean, this is like a movie. As detectives were like pulling out of his house, his daughter Amanda pulls up, and she's, oh, no. Let me tell you what happened.
Mm-hmm.
She said Willa showed up, and she said she had a large dog in the barrel. She said it belonged to the old man. She says it belongs to the old man I care for, and Lewis hid it, and I can't let him see it. So then she offered Dwayne $1,000 to help them burn the barrel containing the dog. Mm-hmm. Amanda said the process took all night, and at some point during the process, Dwayne said he saw what he thought was a spine and a chunk of meat in the fire.
Mm.
And he told Willa and Lewis, this better be a dog.
Well, sir.
Yeah. So Jason Gilbert is Lewis's attorney, and he said that Lewis got third-degree burns from churning the fire, and Willa didn't sleep for 48 to 72 hours during this period. She was just manic. When police went back and searched the farm, they found charred human remains, a pair of burned metal rim glasses, and a steel tread from incinerated tires scattered in Morgan Monroe State Park. The tires were actually placed on top of the barrel to help it burn in the incineration process.
Jeez. So they didn't even dump them out of the barrel. They just did it in the barrel.
They left them in the barrel and burned it. So on Friday, March 13th, the bone fragments that were found were so charred that they weren't even positively identified as Walter's until early June.
Right. Because they got to
test it.
Get the DNA and
Yeah. So
nobody's coming down and saying oh, that's his femur.
If they could even identify, I mean, oof. So arrest warrants were issued for Willa and Lewis. Police spotted Willa's Corvette at a Red Roof Inn early on March 14th in Sharonville, Ohio, and they were both arrested. Willa and Lewis were both charged with murder, kidnapping, knowing abuse or neglect of an adult, knowing exploitation of an adult, tampering with physical evidence, abuse of a corpse, and theft by deception. Willa was also charged with 2 counts of forgery. Before the trial, both were held at the Boone County Jail. Willa was held on $10 million bond, but the amount that Lewis was held on varies by reports. Some say 5 million, some say 10. Either way, he wasn't getting out.
Yeah.
After his arrest, Lewis said to Detective Cox that he was, quote, tired of his mother controlling his life and of being, quote, her slave. Now, Jason Gilbert, as I mentioned earlier, Lewis's attorney, he subpoenaed records from the Hamilton County Job and Family Services Office. Now, there is reason for this. These reports date back to November of 1989 when Lewis was 8 years old. And it gives very detailed history of physical and psychological pain and abuse. The bulk of the report revolves around a specific incident that happened in August of 1994. Lewis told someone, the name in the report was redacted. He told someone that his mother had locked him in a closet at 9 a.m. and then left for the day. He said his mom had been putting him in a locked closet for punishment since March. Now, this was August, but that this was the first time he had actually escaped. And he said he was so afraid when he saw that the padlock and the door were broken that he went to a friend's house. He later called his mom from his friend's house, and his mom agreed not to beat him, not to whip him, when he came home. So when he came home, his mom served him a plate of food. And in that plate of food, there were bugs crawling in it. Lewis said she deliberately put the bugs in the food. Lewis was eventually placed into foster care until a judicial entry from the Hamilton County Juvenile Court dated on October 30th, 1995, terminated the orders of protective supervision, and Willa was granted legal custody again. But as you can imagine, their relationship was real strained from then on.
Yeah, I can imagine it was.
So, okay, we're going to pause this story right here and we're going to talk about Willa for a little bit.
Okay.
Born Willa Glendora Crawford in Cincinnati, Ohio on June 19th of 1961. Lewis is the one who gives this account about his mom. Lewis said that Willa grew up in a very wealthy family. She had 2 brothers and 3 sisters, and they lived in a large house in Lincoln Heights, which is a really affluent neighborhood.
Okay.
Sadly, one of her brothers drowned in the Little Miami River, and then her mom died when she was 13 years old. And Lewis said that after that, she just was basically left alone and went into survival mode. Lewis also said he was unplanned and that he had, quote unquote, rained on her parade when she had them at the age of 19. Later on, she established herself as, we know her, the housekeeper for movers and shakers in the tri-state area, you know, like the wealthy old money, you know. That's how she's able, well, partially, I'm sure there's other things going on, but that's how she's able to afford this cherry red Corvette. Like she always likes to get a new Corvette. All right, so we're going to go back to the case, but we needed to have a little behind the scenes background info on Willa. So Lewis lived in the basement of his mom and Paul's house. And he said he discovered Walter confined in the basement. He doesn't remember if it was February 16th or the 17th, but it was one of those days. He said when he walked into the basement, he saw Walter with his hands and feet taped to a chair and his mouth was taped as well. And Lewis said he appeared to be drugged.
Yikes.
Lewis said that his mother then ordered him to stay in the basement and locked the door, locking them in the basement together. He pulled the tape from Walter's mouth and Walter asked if the terrorist had been paid. He also asked Lewis when he'd be able to leave because he had done everything that the terrorist had asked of him. And he begged and he pleaded with Lewis to set him free. Now, Paul Blanc, Willa's husband, knew nothing about Walter in the basement. Paul has nothing to do with this. He's never been tried on anything. He's never been a suspect. Paul had no idea of what was going on. But he did say that one time he saw his wife, Willa, making country time lemonade on the kitchen counter next to the sink. And there was a small plastic baggie that had like a white powdery substance in it. And then he said he later found a baggie beneath some paperwork on Willa's desk that was very similar. Now, remember, when police went to Walter's house, they found his medication, which means Willa took Walter to her house without his meds. So he didn't have his meds for several days. Walter reportedly vomited and struggled to breathe. Dr. Henry Nasrallah, he's a professor of psychiatry and neuroscience at the University of Cincinnati College of Medicine. He was interviewed for Cincinnati Magazine, and he said that withholding such medicine from a schizophrenic would be like withholding insulin from a diabetic. He said diabetic patients would develop a coma and die, but in schizophrenics, they don't die physically, but they suffer severe psychotic episodes that are usually associated with tissue loss and brain atrophy. So every time they have an episode, it's more atrophy and it causes him to re-experience this like horrendous torment and anguish of the psychotic episode. He said that schizophrenic patients suffer a lot without their medication. Lewis told police that he cleaned up after Walter because Walter not only vomited all over himself, but unfortunately he defecated on himself. So Lewis cleaned that up. And Lewis said he tried to revive Walter 3 times with mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, but he never called 911 because his mother wouldn't allow him to. He said that he carried Walter like a baby up the stairs at one point to get him medical help, but his mother told him no. We don't know exactly at what point after this Walter died, but at some point during this, Lewis said they stored his body in the trash can and it was in there for 2 days.
God.
Before Walter died, he gave Willa his computer passwords and power of attorney. Again, I'm doing everything the terrorist wants. Let me go.
Right.
Willa got the power of attorney and she had control over his bank account and his brokerage account. On February 24th, a trust involving Walter's estate was executed by someone posing as Walter. But of course, we know it wasn't Walter. It stated that in the event of Walter's death, that Willa would inherit 60% of his total assets. 3 days later, she made her first wire transfer in the amount of $10,000.
So she was starting small.
I mean, 10 G's out of what, several million? Whatever. Who's going to miss it?
Yeah. Nobody's going to notice.
So on March 3rd, this would be 10 days after Walter's death, Willa withdrew $200,000 from Walter's account. Nobody noticed, so she ramped it up. What's $200K?
Yeah.
Of course.
Go for it.
That's the maximum amount that you can withdraw. She was set to get another $1.3 million, but she was arrested. It was due to come to her the very next day. Detective Cox sent a subpoena to Fidelity, and he stopped the transfer. Okay, let's look at some of these wire transfers she made. She made the number of wire transfers and certified checks and cash payments, abound, okay? They included a $49,900 payment to Lewis, $3,600 payment to the Boone County Sheriff's Department, which I just find so ironic that you have committed a crime and you're paying off the police with crime money.
Hey, as long as the check clears.
Oh, man. I'm sure they probably gave it back. Maybe. Okay. City Mortgage. She also gave money to City Mortgage. House being foreclosed on, $232,000.
That's got to pay off the mortgage.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was for. So Detective Cox also checked at the Chevy dealership where the SUV, remember, it was towed after the accident. And a salesman said that Willa went into the dealership and she erupted. She was furious when she learned that someone had already bought the new top-of-the-line Corvette ZR1 that she wanted.
Of course.
The cost of the car, $100,000. She told the salesperson she was about to get $1.5 million in cash and she wanted her car. Police search her home and they find a book with the title, How to Choose Your Prey, in her safe.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Who writes a book like that?
I don't know.
Sorry, minutia, but still, wow.
But as we said, in her mind, Walter was the perfect victim. He had lots of money. He didn't know anybody. He lived behind closed doors. He was trying to communicate with aliens. Who was going to miss this dude? She did not think that this couple in another state was going to help bring her down. So at an hour-long hearing that took place on December 2nd, Lewis stared at the floor. He never looked at his mom. She fidgeted and she glared at reporters through her sparkling Dolce & Gabbana designer glasses.
Shock.
Matching, paired up very nicely with her black and white prison stripes. Prosecutor Lyndon Talley Smith sought the death penalty for Willa when the case went to trial, and in 2012, Willa was sentenced to life in prison without parole. She pled guilty to avoid the death penalty. Now, when she was in court, she expressed no remorse, and she still hasn't to this date. Lewis, who has, of course, expressed lots of remorse, was sentenced to 30 years in prison, and he pled guilty to lesser charges. As if this wasn't already heartbreaking enough, when you find out the last thing Walter did, it's going to be over for you.
Oh, I don't want to. Do I want to know?
The last thing Walter was known to have done was to send 24 roses on Valentine's Day to Terry Davis, the woman he had visited with in Binghamton.
Well, the lady he first held hands with.
Yep. The case was featured on TV One's Thou Shalt Not. The episode was called Infernal Minds, and it aired on September 25th, 2017. You can actually see that online. I watched that episode. There's several, or there's 2 different cases featured in that episode, and that's one of them. So you can check that out.
Oh, man.
The Maid and the Mathematician. That is an evil, evil woman.
And thorough, though, too.
That's the scary part. Way too thorough.
She got a guy who was already naturally paranoid.
But
who was kind of onto her, but still couldn't stop it.
Right. That's the thing. It's oh my gosh. If he had not had these friends who he talked to for hours every day, and they're look, I know he goes to these conferences, but something is not right.
Yeah.
If it had not been for them, she would have gotten away with this.
Yeah. Nobody would have looked at. She used that book very well because it seemed like she found somebody with no connections and no one who would miss him or believe that he was something had gone wrong. She just didn't know about bulletin boards. The internet saves again.
But justice has been served. She is in jail for life.
And
I know you like things wrapped up in a nice little bow. So
I very much do. Like, I need to know the bad guys got because, and even the son, though he is remorseful, is in jail as well.
Yes. And, not that he is not to blame, because he absolutely 100% is, but you do kind of feel bad because he, from a very early age, he was groomed and he was abused to do whatever she wanted.
And controlled.
Yeah. All right. So we got to you want to do a quick remix? All right. So we got to you want to do a quick remix?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was just a lot. Like, I feel for this dude.
Oh, if you think that's a lot, wait until next week. Whew.
Yay.
I mean, it's a true crime podcast. Come on.
No, I know. It's just like, I don't know. This one just hit me different tonight. Like, especially
do you feel like you relate to Walter?
No, it feels like he's a paranoid schizophrenic who was paranoid about this lady, but still couldn't
stop her.
Like, and at what point was like, did he not believe himself after how many years where like he was told, oh, you're just being paranoid? He's finally now right, but he doesn't even believe himself. That, I mean, all of this is awful. That's also just like extra heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Like, the dude's mental capacities were spot on in this case, but he had dealt with so many things he probably didn't believe them. It's like the body that cried wolf for too long.
I'm just glad that because you know what? If she had gotten away with this, she would have done it again. We don't know that she didn't do it before, but she definitely would have done it again.
And again.
And again and again. So she is exactly where she belongs.
All for those Corvette Z1s.
And
I mean, also, it's weird that like you and I met less than a mile from the factory that makes those.
I know.
Right?
I know, right? Yeah. And that's another part of this story. It's like, first of all, it was here in Kentucky, and then the Corvette right here.
Yeah.
So crazy. Yeah. All right. So unwind by listening to some Return of Bruno.
Yeah, I'm gonna go listen to some Bruno. Maybe a little Mathematician, anything to like cleanse the mental palate.
Watch some Cobra Kai. That'll definitely cleanse it for you.
Yeah, I'll probably just subscribe to QB again and forget I did it.
It's Quibi. Stop it.
Quibi, QB, not going to be around for long.
I don't know. They've got some big hitters, some heavy hitters on there.
Yeah, they spent a lot of money on the talent there.
They need to come out with some new shows though, because I feel like I've watched everything. So come on, Quibi.
Yeah, come on, Quibi.
Quibi, yes, Quibi.
Quibi.
Remember, quick bite, Quibi.
Quibi.
Mm-hmm.
Was there like an old video game called like Cubo or something?
Yes, Hubert.
Yeah. Hubert, that's what I'm thinking of. The guy with the weird nose.
Yes.
No arms.
All right.
You really missed a marketing opportunity there.
All right. So it's been another A-side, B-side. Don't forget, merch on sale. And yes, they only psychos don't wear masks. Only psychos don't wear masks. Mask is now on our website as well. You still have time to get registered to vote. Don't forget, if you're early voting, you only have until October, I believe. So make sure you check your registration, get out and vote. It is so important. It is so important. You can't not vote. All right. Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, Brooke.